All right. Welcome, one and all, to the Off the Rails Sports Podcast. I am John. If you could, hit that like and subscribe button. It means a lot to us. We're going to do something a little different. Uh, you know, it's not like we're chasing down Bill Simmons or The Ringer or The Athletic. So we're going to do a little mix up here. And what we're going to do is I'm just going to do my reflections on what happened in the day in sports. You can go to a lot of other websites, podcast, and talk about the analytics and all that stuff. I'm just going to give you the eye test. All right, let's get to it. We're gonna call this segment "Notes on a Saturday Night," and every night's going to be a little different. But let's start out with the biggest story in sports, and that would be the Ryder Cup. It's a literal smoke show. I predicted before the Ryder Cup, I thought the U.S. would eke out a point victory, 14 and a half to 13 and a half. I absolutely was wrong. Europe almost got to 14 and a half after the first 2 days. And it's the first time in, I think, 30 years where one team won each of the first four sessions, two on Thursday, two on Friday, two on Saturday. And Europe just plays better as a team. Just point blank. And there's a lot of reasons maybe that is. I think maybe the United States, just the ecosystem in our sports world is about building stars. It's not necessarily about teamwork. When you become a star, then the team comes around you. I think over in Europe, it does seem to be we build the team, and then if a star emerges, so be it. And when your best player, Rory McIlroy, is all about the team, and we've seen the clips if you're into golf, and if you're not, you probably already clicked out anyway, that after they won in Rome, he said, what we want to do is go on the road and win in Bethpage Black. I personally thought, I'm a golfer, I thought the rough was going to be a problem. That's why the Europeans typically don't do well at places like the U.S. Open. And I saw the way the course was set up, and it does seem like Keegan Bradley widened the fairways, kind of minimized the rough, because the United States is a lot of they're bigger hitters. And on Friday, I noticed when the teams were standing next to each other, I mean, it was literally, there was a huge size difference. Like when Rory McIlroy and Fleetwood were against Shambo, I was like, oh my God, it's like kids. But, the kids just showed the adults how to play golf. I will say, I am a traditionalist. The one thing I've always enjoyed about golf is it's an honorable sport. People call penalties on themselves. Theoretically, you're supposed to check yourself. You're supposed to be sincere and honest about what your score is. It's a very honorable system. Yeah, there's guys who cheat out there. I mean, Patrick Reed, let's look at that guy. That guy cheats as much as he breathes. But for the most part, I think the players are pretty honorable, pretty honest about what's going on. And for me, going back in Ryder Cup, without getting too boring, more than I already am, Jack Nicklaus giving Tony Jacklin that putt to have the Ryder Cup was a big thing. I do think, to me, one of the biggest shames was in '99 at Brookline when Justin Leonard hit that long putt and the team literally ran on the green during the match with Jose Marie. I honestly thought they should have conceded the putt to Jose Marie. We didn't. It was a huge comeback at Brookline. We won. All right, it is what it is. And then in subsequent years, I remember a match between Phil Mickelson, back when he was honorable, and before he was chasing every goddamn dollar, and Justin Rose. And I remember he sank a long putt. I think it was on 16 or 17, and Rose put it in. And I remember him across the green giving him the thumbs up, and I'm like, yeah, that's what sportsmanship is. And I was truly disgraced. Now, NBC is feeding to the American market. Understood. We do have a balance and a counterbalance in the booth, right? We have Brad Faxon and we have Paul McGinley. Paul McGinley is basically giving you the Europeans' perspective. Brad is obviously a great American player. And, I like that. I really do. But I have noticed, and if you've watched the first 2 days, there's huge swaths where they have to cut out the crowd. There is no crowd noise. Now, it's not the crowds being silent, it's they're saying obscenities. And I saw the clip of Friday when Rory McIlroy goes to the second hole, and there's a crowd of about 500 Americans saying, F you, Rory. And they kept singing that for about a minute. Now, everybody is sitting here saying, well, Rory is pushing back. Well, you know what? If you want to get on somebody, that's cool, but let them hit the shot. I mean, just be quiet, and then you can open up your trap. It was so bad on Saturday morning that New York had to bring out 12 policemen, I believe on the 14th hole, because it was literally getting that vociferous against Rory. And then we heard Dan Hicks give some bullshit about, well, if they see somebody doing something, they're going to kick him out. Yeah, right. I'm waiting for that. Holding my breath. They ain't kicking nobody out in that group. They're just hoping that they don't run onto the fairway and assault the European team. All right? And at the end of the day, Europe just played better. They smoked the United States. We're going to see what the final tally is on Sunday, but with an 11.5 to 3.5, I mean, what are we looking at? Maybe we can hold them to 16. Maybe, I don't know. Uncle, kudos to Europe. You played excellent. You played well. You played like gentlemen. I wish the United States could say that. Any of those applied to them. Let's talk about some college football. First thing I want to talk about is Indiana pulled off another amazing victory against Iowa. And Kirk Cignetti is the Indiana coach. I'm wondering where he is going to go after this year. He signed an extension at the end of last year. Obviously, he wanted a little more money. It does seem like it does have quite a few outs. And the three schools that I think that he might go to, obviously Florida. He comes from the SEC. He came from Alabama. He came from the Nick Saban coaching tree. Florida is the leader in the clubhouse, but that doesn't really mean a lot. I think a lot now, these coaches have so much power that they are going to get NIL money. They are going to get admissions acquiescence. They're going to get almost anything they want. And to get a coach like Kirk Cignetti, I think you're going to have to give him the house, and he's also going to have to want to go there. The other two schools that I was thinking that Kirk could go to is Clemson. Now, they are not getting rid of Dabo Swinney, but I have a feeling, especially after Syracuse took it to him, and then this week got it handed back to Syracuse. Like, how bad does that loss look? I have a feeling, and obviously I am the least connected person in the world, that Dabo's going to take a year off. He doesn't want to deal with it. He doesn't want to deal with the abuse. I mean, think about this. The two best coaches in college football in the last 20 years have both said, we don't need this. That'd be Urban Meyer and it'd be Nick Saban, right? Now, I got a friend, and I totally agree with this. He said, you know why they do well in college and couldn't do well in the pros? Because they control kids but cannot coach men. Yeah, that's about it. And with NIL, these are no longer kids in a cage. And I'm not trying to put any... The kids had no options before. Okay, yeah, there was a time where they could transfer. There was no NIL money. Oh, sure, there was under-the-table money, but how reliable is that, right? And they could transfer out of a year, but I remember when the SEC would say, well, you can't transfer in the conference. Or you have to sit out a year. And COVID changed so much. Also, I see them running these commercials during college football, and they're like, oh, call your congressman so we can get the NIL thing all figured out. You know what? F you. The NCAA could have done it, but you guys fought the NCAA at every turn. Michigan, Tennessee, Miami, USC. Every time the NCAA came in and said, hey, man, we got to do this legit. We got to have some enforcement. We got to have some rules. They said, F you. Well, you know what? You created this world. You treated the kids like crap for 100 years, and now it's your day. The kids got the upper hand. Good luck and Godspeed. You know what I mean? Also, the third team that I could see Kirk going to, wait, hold on here, is USC. Now, Lincoln Riley has a buyout somewhere in the neighborhood of what Jimbo Fisher did. That guy's getting, I believe, $10 million a year for the next 6 years or something like that. Lincoln Riley's got that kind of buyout. At what point does USC, especially after losing on the road to Illinois, what happens there? It gets really sad. And I am not like all these other podcasts where you have a bad week, it's time to ring you up. Nothing to see here, you're gone. I mean, I think Paul Feinbaum is truly one of the best commentators in the world of college football. Absolutely unequivocally. I think Matt Berry is a joke because he just says what he thinks people want to hear. But Paul is actually, look, he gets things wrong. I'm not gonna hold him to that. I mean, he thought Arch Manning was going to be the Heisman winner. He thought Texas was going to win the national championship. Okay, look, he got it wrong. I get it. But he has been calling for Billy Napier's firing for a year. And last year about this time, Billy was on dicey ice. And then he pulled off an amazing run at the end, and they said, well, maybe he's coming around. It doesn't seem like that's happening. And I think we're at the point where DJ Langway, the quarterback, might split. Whatever that is, I do think they are going to buy out Billy. And this is how crazy the world is. Jimmy Sexton's the super agent for all the college football coaches. His buyout's considered cheap at, I think, $26 million. God, that's 2 years of Lincoln Riley, right? But I think USC might be the team that says, okay, we're just going to pay the Jimbo Fisher exit fee. Also, I want to say I'm getting a little tired of Brian Kelly blaming everybody but himself. Oh, Garrett Nussmeier has to play well. They lost at Ole Miss. Tough loss. Their leading running back, their tackle were out. Okay, they couldn't run the ball. Garrett didn't play that well. I understand. But at some point, you got to quit pointing fingers, Brian Kelly, because it's getting goddamn old. It really is. It's everybody but you. Oh, Notre Dame, you were blaming the kids. Now at LSU, you have some of the most talented kids in the world, and you only score 19 points at Ole Miss. All right, hey, look, everybody can lose. I saw the stats on ESPN. They said they have a 23% chance of making the college football playoff. I think that's nonsense. I think they're going to make the college football. But look, they're doing analytics. They're doing whatever they're doing. So be it. Let's get to Alabama and Georgia. And one or two things was going to give way. Georgia had a 33-game home winning streak. Alabama, 2-5, away from Tuscaloosa under Kalen DeBoer, but had won 6 out of the last 7 with Georgia. Well, you can go ahead and strike up another one, 7 out of 8 against Georgia. And let's talk about the game inside the game. Ryan Williams dropped a long touchdown pass in the first quarter, and it did seem like the team started shying away from him. At the beginning of the year, he was one of the Heisman favorites. Well, Alabama does have a Heisman favorite. His name is Ty Simpson, and that guy is playing lights out. I remember seeing him at the beginning of the year at about 22-1, and I was like, maybe this is the thing. But I didn't really believe in the Kalen DeBoer thing. I didn't. I will say this. Kalen is winning the game he has to win. Yeah, Vanderbilt's coming in this week. They lost at Vanderbilt last year, and that's when everybody was calling for his head. The thing is, who are you going to get to walk in the door who's going to replace Nick Saban? Kalen DeBoer's about as good as you can do. I'm sorry. That guy will win a title if you give him 5 years. I don't know if it's going to be this year. I don't know if it's going to be next year. It's going to be the Lou Holtz syndrome. The guy builds a solid program, but he's going to lose 1 game a year he shouldn't. Now, can you handle if it's South Carolina? Can you handle if it's Vanderbilt? No, because the Tide think they should go 15-0 every year, even though they're only playing 13 games. Okay? That's how it is. But I was surprised how they went away from Ryan Williams. They actually put him on the bench for a little bit. He made a couple nice catches at the end of the first half. He seemed to find his footing. But I will tell you this, Ty Simpson believes in Bernard. That is his go-to guy. We shall see how it plays out. Also, Oregon against Penn State. Where do you start? James Franklin is obviously an excellent football coach. This was the game he needed to win. He had everything lined up. 9 out of 11 starters on offense came back. 8 out of 11 came back on defense. They were at home on a Saturday night. The whiteout. Oregon had to go across the country, across 3 time zones, and Oregon wins. You know, they were up by 14. Aller brings them back. 14 points in the fourth quarter. They get to overtime. I thought, wow, they're really going to pull some magic out. They just find a way to lose. And I want everybody to remember something. I don't know if you do, but back in the day, Joe Paterno was amazing, but he couldn't win a title. Bobby Bowden was amazing, but he couldn't win a title. There was people who always said, I don't know if they can ever win the big game. Well, obviously they could. Maybe it's going to take James Franklin. James Franklin, I'm not going to go out on a limb and say that guy's going to win a title, but he's going to keep you in the running. You know? What do you want? O'Brien? You want O'Brien to come back? Introduce you to what 8-4 is every year? Or do you want to be 11-1? Okay. So you lose to Oregon. So you lose to Ohio State. It's just what it is, right? And then you get into the playoff and let's see what happens. I know the Notre Dame loss still stings, but you know, it happens. They're going to find a way, but I did think this was the game that James Franklin really had to win. All right, I'm getting a little long in the tooth here. Virginia against Florida State. Now, that was the Friday night game, and I don't... Virginia wins in overtime, double overtime against Florida State. But the thing that really I was just aghast at, you could see what was coming. They loaded up the student section in the end zone, and there was literally 20,000 people waiting to storm the field. Now, we got to overtime. They win in double overtime, and they storm the field. I don't know why they didn't have that 3-minute rule like the SEC. They did such a piss poor job of crowd control, they couldn't have stopped it for 3 minutes. It is stupid, and somebody is really going to get hurt. And here's what I want to put out there that nobody else is going to put out there. What happens if the game ended on a controversial finish and Florida State got the victory when they really shouldn't have? Don't tell me replay gets them all right. You would have had an effing riot. When you bring 20,000 kids, and I literally saw the Florida State guys walking off in the middle of a huge, huge mass of humanity. It was stupid. And I think, honestly, the ACC should fine Virginia $5 million. I don't really care. It's stupid and whatever. Another thing that the ACC did that I thought was brilliant is they put us inside the booth. When they have replays, they go to the ACC Center. Well, we got to hear every part of it, and I thought it was absolutely fascinating. It's just going to be a matter of weeks till the SEC, the Big Ten, the Big 12 all end up doing it, because I thought it was just brilliant. Also, on Saturday night, the Mets and the Reds are still tied for that last wild card. We shall see how it comes out on Sunday. All right. That's my notes for a Saturday in the world of sports. Hey, leave a comment. Hit that like and subscribe. Tell me if you like this segment or if you just want more actual reporting. And we'll see you soon on Off the Rails Sports Podcast.